Alrighty, everyone. This is Meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys. Hey, we are actually live. Check that out. And hopefully, we're going to knock on wood that things don't blow up a little bit like they did yesterday in terms of the signal. Alrighty, everyone. So, welcome to today's weather chat. I am meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys. We got a lot to talk about. I know most of the U.S. is kind of baking right now in the heat. And where I am, ironically, we are not. But I did take one for the team today, and I did leave the nice, comfortable life here in Duluth for a few moments and took a drive down towards Minneapolis to kind of experience the heat down there. And let me just tell you, folks, it is awful, absolutely terrible down there, temperature-wise. It is, honestly, to be quite honest, it felt like the Deep South. That is pretty much the gist of what it was down there. It's about 100 degrees, upper 90s. Of course, when you're on the roadway, you got that blacktop there, and that is makes it feel a lot hotter than it actually is. But it's also very, very humid down there, and I mean very humid. To very high dew points. Again, like I said, it really does feel like the Deep South down in Minneapolis. So, of course, where I live, we're pretty far up north, so I guess Minneapolis could technically be considered the South. Anyways, this is a little joke there. So with that in mind, we're going to kind of talk about the heat today. A couple cool things actually on the radar. You can kind of see the frontal boundary that's responsible for that heat on the radar. And we're not talking about storms either, just kind of such a contrast in the air masses that you can actually see it a little bit on the radar. So we'll take a little bit of a look at that. There's some ridge riding storms over in Ohio right now. Again, we got this big upper level ridge that is sitting right over our region and well, over half of the U.S., I guess I should say. And of course, we'll take a look at the upper level map and we'll take a look at some storms over in Ohio and western Pennsylvania, an area that I am very familiar with. I spent a lot of well, I guess, what would you say, the first probably 25 years of my life around that area, if not even more than that. So we'll kind of take a look at some of my old stomping grounds, some of the storms they got going on over there. And we're also going to take a look at Tropical Storm Franklin, probably one of, I wouldn't say the least exciting system, right, in terms of the Atlantic, but kind of the only really one at the moment that we got going on. And so we'll take a little bit of a look over at Franklin here. And guys, for those of you, don't forget to, if you're new to this chat, feel free to ask questions, weather questions, that is. We'll talk about weather. That is pretty much the gist of this, hence the title, Weather Chat with Timmy. So, of course, I'll answer some weather questions if you have them. You can leave them there in the comments. I'll get to those, typically as quickly as I can and answer them and talk a little bit about here. And but without any further ado, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a look over at let's take a look at, we'll start off with Tropical Storm Franklin if there's no objections to that. So let's take a look here at Franklin, I guess I should say. Franklin is a tropical storm. It's a little bit better organized now than it was this time yesterday. When we took a look at it yesterday, it was a mess. And it kind of still, to a degree, is a little bit of a mess right now, albeit not quite as bad as it was yesterday. It actually is over the island of Hispaniola, which is, the island in the Greater Antilles of the Caribbean. It includes Haiti on the west, Dominican Republic over on the east. And that's kind of where it's over right now, is the Dominican Republic. Certainly producing some rain there, but as far as winds and everything else are concerned, not really doing too much. And it's going to kind of stay a little bit weak here as we go forward, at least over the next couple of days, though it will try to maybe gradually intensify. Bottom left there beneath my face, you see that kind of blob-looking thing there. That is infrared satellite imagery. It's showing kind of a little bit better organization than it was yesterday. This is not precipitation. This is just cloud top temperatures where we see those brighter reds. Those are colder cloud tops, indicative that we're looking at some kind of higher level clouds. Tends to be associated with thunderstorms. And naturally, where you see kind of those bluer, lower clouds or, kind of a lack thereof. So that is kind of a look at Franklin right now. Again, as mentioned, not the most organized system in the world. but it is still there nonetheless. And it's likely going to be happening here is over the next couple of days. It might try to gradually intensify a little bit. It's getting a little bit beat up due to some wind shear that's in the way. And again, we talk about strong storms. It's kind of funny because normally when we talk about, severe thunderstorms here in our own area, or, in most of the U.S., you want wind shear, but hurricanes kind of follow a little bit of a different set of laws. They are not necessarily the biggest fans of wind shear. That can actually really kind of disrupt a tropical system's development or even, honestly, its existence. Uh, and when that happens, well, again, it kind of weaken it off a little bit. So for right now, it's going to also kind of be in an area of a little bit of wind shear, but it is going to eventually kind of enter maybe a more favorable environment that'll help it to maybe intensify, possibly becoming a hurricane by the time we get towards the weekend, and then maybe trying to intensify a little bit more as it takes a northerly turn, courtesy of an upper level trough it'll probably be meeting up with, and that'll help maybe take it close to the island of Bermuda, which is British overseas territory. So, Ben, not really much else to talk about with Franklin at the moment here. Again, not really much going on with it, kind of a weak system there. But again, it is expected to maybe kind of intensify a little bit more. And then eventually we should maybe see it becoming a hurricane this weekend, and that'll give us a lot of fun to talk about too. So let's also go ahead and we're going to flip over to the old radar here. We're going to take a look down at Ohio. Again, an area I'm very, very familiar with here. You're going to have to pardon me as we flip up the matrix here again. There you go. You're going to see that screen there, but let's go towards the radar. Hey, check it. Look at this. We got ourselves some storms. All right. We got ourselves some storms that are making their way through the East Cleveland area, coming off of Lake Erie, all the way down towards the Youngstown Boardman area and just north of Pittsburgh, down around Cranberry Township, which if you've ever been around Cranberry Township in Pennsylvania, just north of the Pittsburgh area, it is an absolute traffic nightmare. A lot of malls there. It's where two interstates meet nearby, and it's just kind of a traffic mess, but it does have some good stores there. But overall, you get the idea. These guys are actually riding kind of on the eastern edge of the warm front. And that warm front, actually, if we zoom out a little bit here, you can see that red line just across Ohio, back over into Michigan, all the way up towards Minneapolis. And that is actually that heat wave. Yes, that is what it looks like, at least on the surface chart. So these storms are actually riding on the what would be the equivalent of the northern edge of the frontal boundary, but because the frontal boundary is oriented north to south, it's on the eastern edge, you get the idea. Nothing strong or severe right now with these storms, at least at the moment. Most likely, there's probably some gusty winds with those storms, but again, mainly just some heavy rainfall down with them. You might actually be able to maybe flip on the old lightning tracker here. Maybe we can get take a look here. Nope, we don't want the buoy report, at least not right now. Let's see here, maybe if we can't get some lightning flashes up here and see maybe if we could see any here with these storms if it does pop up. And yeah, there's some decent lightning with there's certainly probably some good light shows. We see a little bit of probably what might be a little bit of an outflow boundary kind of coming off at least on the western edge of that line there, but this is actually moving straight down to the south. And again, it's mainly just kind of this heavy rain producer. It's a little bit hot and mild, muggy down there. In fact, taking a look here, down across, what is that? I lost my county for a second. That's in Summit County. Yeah, that's Akron. Says so right there in the abbreviation, KAR. Not Canton Akron Airport, but the other airport in Akron. 68 degrees there right now, dew point 65 degrees. So again, a little bit on the mild side, and certainly a little bit on the muggy side. But take a look here on the other side of those storms down around Youngstown, is 65 degrees too. So not much of a variation with the temperatures here, but certainly a lot of moisture to work with these storms. And again, that's kind of helping them to get going just there a little bit. And these guys are probably going to keep going through the rest of the evening hours, trying to track their way down to the south. They may try to maybe weaken up a little bit once the sun sets, but either way, you get the idea. Certainly some needed rain down around that area. Of course, they're not quite as dry as other parts of the U.S. Doesn't seem to be much in the way of kind of a structure that would indicate maybe a lot in the way of hail, maybe some small, pea-sized hail here and there, at least the way things look at the moment. But more or less just kind of a heavy downpour and certainly kind of a little bit of a lightning show. We have the lightning strikes flipped on to about 5 minutes. Let's see how many lightning strikes we've had over the past about 30 minutes or so. And again, kind of enough of a little rumble there. So kind of cool, actually. If we had kind of better internet, we might maybe try to kind of put this a little bit in a loop. We'll give it a shot here. Hopefully it doesn't crash the internet. There you go. So kind of cool there, a quick little loop. And again, we can see those storms just tracking their way down to the south. So if anyone happens to be watching from that area, feel free to let us know if it's storming where you are. Again, it's mainly in the eastern half of Ohio, heading down over towards parts of Pennsylvania near the Panhandle there. Again, I used to actually broadcast. One of the places I worked at was in Zanesville, which is all the way down here. And let's see what their weather is at the moment. It's 82 degrees and kind of muggy down there. So the atmosphere is certainly a little bit favorable for it, but also, going to have to kind of contend maybe a little bit with the sun beginning to set down across that area. So a very summer-like pattern across a good portion of the Midwest. The main thing today has just been the heat. And again, if any of you live anywhere, west of Toledo, you've probably been dealing with it all day today. Let's take a look at some of these numbers, folks. It is 102 degrees in Winona, Minnesota. I've been there. It is 102 degrees there right now. Dew point of about 68 degrees. That's going to put that heat index easily well over 100 degrees, obviously. With the temperature being 100, well, you get the idea. That is very hot weather, folks. Basically, kind of what's going on here. And we'll kind of flip over to a little bit of a scientific map here. Don't be frightened. We're not going to stay on it too long. But much like we were talking yesterday, we were watching that upper level high that is in position. It was right over Kansas City. It's still kind of around that area. It has moved a little bit down to the south and to the east, but you get the idea. This upper level high is really kind of what is responsible for not only the quiet weather across the central part of the U.S., but it's also helping the heat that is, pretty much infiltrated that entire region. You'll notice to the north of that big circle in the middle there, you'll notice kind of a little bit of an arching there of those lines. Those are lines of equal height. Don't worry about those. But kind of what you do want to see with those lines is they are kind of they are somewhat of an indication of the direction of the winds. And so basically, the airflow around the upper level high, as with a surface high, is clockwise, at least in the northern hemisphere. So the upper level winds going across Wyoming and the Dakotas is coming in from the southwest, but it's a northwesterly wind going across the Great Lakes, at least in the upper levels, and that's what's helping to push those storms almost down to the south and to the east there. So again, what you see here is this upper level high is really the dominant feature here with a lot of the U.S. weather right now, especially across the Midwest and the Deep South. Eventually, we will start to see it kind of beginning to erode away, and when it does so, we'll eventually see kind of a little bit of a break from some of this heat in our own area, but or pretty much in the areas that have been baking over the past couple of days. So that's kind of a little bit of a setup there. And earlier on, well, maybe we won't save it for this one. I don't want to scare everyone off, this early in or us doing this show, but it is kind of cool to see on temperature profiles going up the atmosphere, the difference. And one of the big differences that is noticed with this current, atmospheric situation right now, heat wave, I guess I should say, there's the matrix again here, is the fact that there is a very sharp temperature contrast north of that warm front that is associated with all that. So we took a look at the upper level high on the map there. Now we're going to look at the surface. There's a little area of low pressure, a little wave of low pressure moving across western Wisconsin at this time. If we zoom out here just a little bit really quickly, you can kind of see here on the surface the boundaries of this heat wave, and it stretches all the way from just to the west of Pierre, South Dakota, all the way towards Minneapolis, going through north central Wisconsin, and then it hooks down through Michigan, right along that warm front there. You see that it's trying to push its way into western Ohio at this time. So again, that is kind of what is going on more or less, at least at the surface. Interestingly, there are some storms ongoing across parts of North Dakota. Once again, north of that warm frontal boundary, probably similar in structure to the storms that are going across western Ohio, albeit maybe just a little bit on the stronger side. So where we're seeing the hottest temperatures right now, of course, is to the south of that stalled out frontal boundary, which is right over Minneapolis. And here's something pretty cool that we can actually see here on the once we take off the surface chart here. We'll take a look here at the radar imagery straight out of Minneapolis. This comes from the Minneapolis radar site. Take a look at something really cool here. You'll notice what looks to be this little wavy line. that goes from pretty much downtown Minneapolis, and then it curves down south of St. Paul towards the town of South St. Paul. So creative name there. That wavy thing right now is the frontal boundary. The difference here with the system is such a strong air mass to the north of it that it is showing up on the radar imagery as if it was precipitation. Now, mind you, the radar setting is pretty low. It's actually on clear air mode. So if we were to flip this to precipitation mode, you probably wouldn't see it. It's very sensitive, at least this setting here. And basically, it's picking up on the difference in the air mass across the Minneapolis metro. I drove through that earlier on today. I came down I-35, went through South St. Paul, and beat it earlier. It has not moved much. In fact, this frontal boundary is somewhat stationary, at least right now, over the Twin Cities area, and that's why we're seeing kind of a little bit of a variation in the temperatures across the Minneapolis region. But not only that, but what's really fascinating about this too is that I was down there earlier today, and yes, I took some video, and I'll see maybe about posting some of that video because it is quite fascinating to see. And we're going to talk about something even more fascinating just to the north of that frontal boundary too. But there it is right there on the radar. You can see it has not moved much through the day today. It's just kind of meandering around the Twin Cities area, or as we call it up here, the cities. Not to be confused with the 40,000 other cities in the U.S., but you get the idea there. Take a look at that. Pretty cool. You can see it there on the radar imagery. That is the frontal boundary. And if you look really carefully, notice here what the radar is picking up just down to the south of this kind of line. Notice how the movement of the air, you can see it there on the radar, it's kind of southwesterly, and then it changes to west closer towards that frontal boundary. Take a look at that. You can actually see the wind direction, and then look up here to the north around Coon Rapids, heading over towards Forest Lake. The winds are coming out of the north. That is really awesome to see here. One of the a really cool feature with this heat wave, and it just so happens that not only that, but the position of it with the radar in Johansson, really awesome to see there. That is something you're not going to see every single day there. So if you happen to have access to a radar or whatnot, or if you like looking at it there it is. You can actually see the frontal boundary, the air mass is moving there on this particular radar scan, something that you can kind of generally see, but this is really pronounced, folks. This is about as almost what you want to consider kind of a textbook example of basically seeing the air with the radar. And normally we talk about precipitation, which is part of the air, but in this situation, the air mass kind of contrast is so strong, especially up towards the north. It's showing up there on the radar, and it's showing up as precipitation. Radar doesn't really necessarily know the difference, at least in this particular setting, but that's not rain. It's not actually raining there. It's clear. It's mostly clear skies down there. It was mostly clear when I was down there, and it still is kind of mostly clear, maybe partly cloudy in some spots, but you get the idea. So that is a loop there. Very, very fascinating, and absolutely love taking a look at that there. So we'll go ahead and stop it here, give the bandwidth a little bit of a break, not having to load all that. But one other thing, too, that we'll kind of take a look at, which is pretty cool that I want to see here, and I know I might be getting a little too sciencey for some folks, so I do apologize, but don't worry, we'll come back to maybe not as sciencey stuff here. We'll take a look at the temperatures a little bit further up towards the north. I know I keep talking about it. I do want to show you it because it is actually kind of fascinating. And take a look here. This is a velocity radar image. That's what you see here on your right. It looks like Christmas decoration gone wrong, but do not worry. It is actually a velocity radar imagery. And we typically use this for actually looking at rotation or strong winds within a thunderstorm. But in this particular setup, we can also use it to kind of get a gauge of the winds at the surface. Even though I got the surface observations up here in Brooklyn Park, take a look. Winds are coming in from the north, indicated by that little red line there. So again, different air mass. Even though the temperatures are still pretty hot, this is a separate air mass up around the Brooklyn Park and Coon Rapids area. Same thing. Let's take a look at Coon Rapids. It is 90 degrees over there. All right. Winds coming in from the north. Still kind of a high dew point, but we're not that far away from the boundary. Let's look a little further south. Let's look at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. I've flown out of there before. I'll take a look there. 96 degrees, dew point 74. Winds are coming in from the southwest. So that is, again, an indication here of the different air masses. You got winds coming in from the north across the northern half of the Minneapolis metro, but if you're in the southern half of the Minneapolis metro, winds are coming in from the southwest. Again, that's what you'd expect after the passage of a warm front. Because this front is stalled out, well, you get the idea. It's been like that all day, folks. When I was driving down there earlier on today, right around Chicasco City and everything on the northeast of Minneapolis. It started getting clear. It started getting hot, but the winds were still out of the north. I could see it on all the car sales places. They like their big flags. You could see the winds were coming out of the north, even though it was in the lower 90s. Crossed through St. Paul, went down towards around the Egan area in Bloomington, and the winds were coming straight, and you could see it again on the flags and the trees. It was coming out of the southwest. It was really kind of a fascinating thing if you are a weather nerd. It was just quite fascinating to see, and it has not moved much all day today. But let's look a little further to the north here, and because we're going to take a look now at temperatures, we'll talk about the temperatures as we have been already. But we're going to go ahead and flip off the station models here, and we're going to flip on the actual temperatures here. We'll go back to our singular radar, and we'll get some numbers here. So let's take a look here, if we zoom out a little bit, and we saw this the other day too, or yesterday. I mean, and even I think even the day before that. So, for those of you who were watching yesterday and everything else, this should not be coming as a shocker to you. That it is noticeably cooler up in the north. You can see those colors getting a little bit more yellow and then a little bit more tan almost. At least the way this color scale works here. Folks, I am up near Duluth. Actually, I'm in Superior, which is over in Wisconsin, but it is 63 degrees here. It has been cloudy all day. We had fog earlier on this morning, and that fog goes all the way over towards Cloquet, parts of Carleton County. You start losing it once you get down towards Moose Lake. That's what I observed not only going to Minneapolis this morning or earlier on this afternoon, but also coming back from it. So again, the air mass has not really changed over here either. In fact, what we have is such a hot air mass, and then of course we got this cooler air mass being helped out by the already cool Lake Superior. I mean, let's take a look here right now. This is in the middle of Lake Superior. There's your picture. Cloudy. Yeah, that's what it's been. We got this right at the lower levels. But what's interesting to keep in mind though is that while we've been talking about the heat in Minneapolis and how it's only in the 60s here. At least up where I am, if you go a couple thousand feet above, guys, it's kind of the same air mass in Minneapolis that we have in Minneapolis that's actually over here. This is called an inversion. We got cooler air below, warmer air aloft, and that's helping to produce that stratus, that cloud cover. We also have the lake, which is kind of influencing it a little bit, kind of helping to add some moisture, and there's some other factors going on that I'll kind of spare you the details, but that's what it has been the past at least 2 days up here. It has been mostly cloudy, kind of foggy, and temperatures have not really moved much. So while it's baking across the southern half of the state, honestly, not even the southern half of Wisconsin. I mean, you go about an hour and a half down to the south, and it's the middle of, well, it is straight summer down there. Up here, it's basically kind of early fall. So rather kind of a really interesting. I mean, this is a very great. You can learn a lot synoptically. Big word there in meteorology. Synoptic, large scale. But you can learn a lot from what's going on right now. Some great examples of inversions. Radar. Being able to decipher things on radar. So while yes, this is a miserable, absolutely miserable heat wave, and I can attest to that, folks. For the 20 minutes I spent with my windows down around Minneapolis, it was just terrible. And if you know me, I'm a winter person. Why else would I live up here? Yeah, it's pretty bad. So it's pretty hot down there. So again, this is Lake Superior right now. Let's see here. I wonder if it has the water temperature listed on here because I am curious. Sea surface temperature, about 58 degrees. That's about the warmest it's been all season. Let's go a little bit further. Water temperature is not listed on here, but it is, let's see here, windy, got the air temperature 60 degrees there. Yeah, so I mean, folks, it is not a warm one up here in Duluth. So again, you have this frontal boundary, which is kind of stalled out. And part of the reason that frontal boundary is stalled out right over, the Minneapolis area is that warmer air cannot move that colder, dense air. It just cannot happen. And because of that, it's kind of stalled out the frontal boundary. Now, in the wintertime, we kind of see this sometimes the same thing, especially on the East Coast, and that helps to develop nor'easters, like some other factors going on with that. But it is still pretty interesting nonetheless. Hey, forgot to tell you, let's see here, Alex, sorry, this whole time I'm talking about how, feel free to leave your comments, and I'll tell you what, leave it to me to forget to check the comments. But yeah, so Alex said that it stormed earlier, sunny here now. Yep, she's over. I'm assuming you're probably over in Ohio. And Michael said that it is hazy, hot, and humid in Indiana, and summer is in full force. Yeah, it is. I mean, and I'll tell you, it's only going to stay hotter. And what's really interesting about this, truthfully, what I think is really kind of interesting about this is that there's extreme heat warnings that are up, and maybe I'll pull those up here in a little bit. But there's actually extreme heat warnings that are in effect for, I believe it's the entire state of Iowa, the entire state of Illinois, the entire state of Missouri, the entire state of Arkansas. And I was talking about earlier how in Minneapolis it felt a lot like the Deep South. I've been there before in July, and I can attest it is absolutely terrible weather-wise in the middle of summer down there. It's funny. The weather that they're having now in Minneapolis was the weather that I had when I was down in Louisiana. Okay, near 100 degrees, absolutely high humidity, and just miserable. You couldn't do anything for half the day. It's funny because now Louisiana has excessive heat warnings that are also in effect, and that's actually a good thing. I should probably check. It's a good thing I just went on that rant. I'd be curious to see what their weather is down there right now. Down, of course, let's check out Lafayette. See what their temperature is there at the moment here. I'm the only person who cannot remember where I put things on the smartphones. I know I'm like an old timer sometimes. In Lafayette, Louisiana, is 100 degrees there right now. Yeah, that is just awful, just awful hot. I don't even want to begin to know what their other conditions are. Let's see here. The humidity feels like 108. Let's see. Dew point is 72 degrees there right now. People in Minneapolis, take this to heart with you. It's actually worse in Minneapolis right now than it is down in Lafayette. Now that's something, wow, that is actually quite impressive. That according at least to the surface observations, yeah, it is worse in Minneapolis than it is in Lafayette, Louisiana, and that is really impressive because it's very, very hot down there. So yeah, all things considered, that is what is going on. So we talked about kind of what's going on with the tropics. Again, those are still kind of heating up a little bit. It's going to take a little bit of a time for that to happen. But again, the heat being the main thing. I know a lot of places are, especially have just been baking under it the past couple of days. But as we talked about earlier, it's looking like that ridge is going to start to break down. Temperatures are going to start to cool down around Minneapolis. That frontal boundary that's stalled out there right now is going to eventually begin to kind of start to push its way slowly down to the south as we could probably go through the overnight tonight. And that might actually produce a couple of thunderstorms down there. So it'll be interesting to see what, kind of what becomes of those. But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So it's going to be cooler tomorrow by about, 10 degrees or so, which is going to put it in the upper 80s. So it's going to take a few days for that heat to get out. It's going to take a few days for this whole system to kind of clear its way down, but then eventually things will kind of return a little bit back to normal. For people to the east of it, well, it's probably going to start getting hot for you guys too. But it does appear that maybe it might not be getting quite as hot in places like Ohio. It's still going to be hot and humid, but maybe not quite like what they're seeing up in the upper Midwest right now, or even the lower mid, the rest of the Midwest. The West, wow, say that 5 times fast. Rest of the Midwest. Whew, that is a tongue twister. I'll leave it to me to come up with those. So that is kind of a look at that. So while we're on the topic here, one thing I do kind of want to see here, we'll keep it on me for a second, but one thing I do kind of want to see if I can pull up for you guys that might be of interest. Now, it's a little scientific, so I don't really want to scare everyone away with this because this is not something that I would normally show. But again, if you want a little bit of an insight here on the atmosphere kind of that we're talking about. Now, earlier, if you were with us, you heard me mention that, you go a few thousand feet above here, where we are up around Superior, near Duluth. If you were to go a few thousand feet up, the air mass above Superior, Duluth area is actually very similar to the air mass over Minneapolis. This difference is at the surface. And again, there's a few factors going into that here, but I kind of want to show you a little bit here. And again, this is going to be kind of technical, so I'll kind of explain a little bit, but if you don't understand it, it's quite all right. There's honestly even some meteorologists who kind of struggle to read these charts sometimes. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of kind of some of the layout, but that's just more for appearance purposes. What would I change about it? Well, you'll see here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up what we call an upper level sounding to put it in layman's terms for you. And we're going to go ahead and flip the screen over. And again, folks, we are going to take a look at something that might maybe kind of scare you a little bit here, but I don't want you guys to be afraid when I show you this, because I'll kind of explain it a little bit quickly here, and then we'll get off of it so you don't have to, we don't have to take a look at it the entire time. This is an upper level sounding. So it's a weather balloon. Weather balloon was released, boom, went up into the atmosphere. The red line is temperature, but the temperature is slanted a bit. Again, I'm not going to teach you how to read. This is called a skew T-plot. If you want to know more about it, I'm certain if you Google it, you'll be able to find some diagrams that could explain this a little bit better. As time goes on, we'll use these, especially when it comes to severe weather and stuff like that. But what I really want you to focus on here is the red line. Don't worry about the green line. That's just dew point. And in our situation, it doesn't really have too much of a part to play until we get down to the lower atmosphere. So basically what you're looking at here is temperature. Now, the further to the right you see that red line, the warmer the temperature is based on the dry adiabatic lapse rate. This whole thing is slanted. I know, folks, it's kind of confusing, but here's what you need to take away from this. As you go up, you see those numbers on the left, 1,000, 900, 800, 700. That's pressure height. For now, just think of it as height, going up with height, all right? It's the same thing, just a different way. Instead of feet, we're doing pressure levels. There's a whole reason behind that in meteorology. I'll spare you the details with that. But basically, that red line, you see that, follow my cursor here. At the surface, there it is. It's about, about 15 degrees Celsius, okay? And remember, the temperature lines are slanted. These black lines are slanted. So again, there's a lot of things in your head you got to do, but don't worry about that. What you need to know here is that take a look. Right here, about 15 degrees, okay? Or, about 15 degrees Celsius. Sorry, pull that back down. All right. As we go higher up of height, notice, boom, that red line shoots over towards the right of your screen there. And the temperature rises with height, okay? That's basically what that's showing. That is an inversion. All right, we got warmer air above colder air. Warm air likes to rise. Cold air is denser. It likes to sink. So that's the inversion. There you go. That warmer air, basically what has to happen at this point is we need enough wind to kind of mix this air around. And sometimes, especially across the plains and the Midwest and most of the U.S., actually, when you're not by a body of water sometimes, daytime winds will be enough to start moving that red line further and further over to a point where it matches up with what you'd kind of expect to see with the slant here. You can kind of picture in your head here, see how that red line is kind of going from the top of your screen down at an angle. In meteorology, what we would do, one of the old school forecasting techniques that we would use is this came out in the morning. What we would actually do is we would look at the temperature about right here, and we would basically bring it down with our eyes, and that would give us an idea of what the high temperature for the day would be, so long as nothing else is, so long as there's not any extraordinary circumstances going on. So it's just kind of an old weather forecasting technique, but we use these a lot. But I just want to show you, this is International Falls, right up on the Canadian border, okay? Their air mass very similar in the surface to what's in Duluth, so that, 60 degrees, not very warm, cloudy. And you see that green line and the red line are combined, that's clouds. All right, the dew point has met the temperature. All right, so it's condensed. So we got a cloud there. So you can see the cloud layer is very low. Once you get above, look at how they spread apart again. And there's not much cloud cover above the stratus that is over northern Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin right now. There really isn't. It's just all low level clouds. So again, this all right here that I'm circling here, if you're able to see it, this all right here is that upper level high. You got the air that is sinking down. It warms as it compresses. So that's why the temperature up here is warm, even though, you get the idea. At the surface, though, again, it's getting the effect a little bit from the lake and the air mass at the surface that is in place. So again, folks, when we're talking about meteorology, we're not just forecasting the surface. All of this has to be taken into account. And that's what a lot of today's models do. It saves us time with the calculator of having to do this all by hand. Like when I was younger, you used to have to do some of this. You used to have to do by hand in terms of effectively analyzing. Now there's some shortcut ways for it, but this is one of the original folks. This is old school meteorology, I guess you could say. These things have been around for a long time. I mean, a long time, probably since even before my time. Ever since we've been able to get thermometers and dew points, in a radio and launch it in a balloon. So again, that's the inversion. So you're probably saying to me, okay, so what about Minneapolis? All right, let's take a look at Minneapolis. Now, Minneapolis, as I said, when we take a look at the upper levels, you're going to notice it looks rather the same. In fact, side by side, in the mid to upper levels, it kind of looks the same. A little bit drier up there. Part of that's because there's some air that came out of the desert southwest that got looped in to this upper level high, and it looks like it maybe kind of dried out in some of the upper levels. But overall, you get the idea. Again, this is from this morning, so understand that, right? If we were to take the sounding right now, that red line would likely continue straight down at this angle. Okay, and that is, I mean, 40. It's upper 30 Celsius there, so again, approaching 100 degrees. So that air has been mixed. The winds help that because it doesn't have a body of water affecting it. It was able to warm up. So whenever the 0Z sounding would come out, which probably might not be for another hour or so, it would show that this line goes straight down. All right. So imagine that this portion right here has been moved over here and actually kind of following this line right here. And that's actually the dry adiabatic lapse rate, textbook setup there. So again, folks, it's what you're looking at. When you're looking at the same. Obviously things change with distance, but it's generally the same air mass across most of Minnesota. It's just at the surface things are a little bit different, and that's that surface front, as we took a look at earlier. You can see it on the radar. There it is, right there, hanging out at the Twin Cities. It just is it cannot move. It wants to move northward. Believe me, with the winds that are down there, not strong, but it's enough that this thing would have, wants to drift northward a little bit. But that cooler air is just not going to let it. And thus it has led to an overcast, very overcast, low-level clouds out across northern Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin, and it has just created absolutely fascinating weather setup there. Something that interests me a lot. Now, again, as I'm certain, I probably scared some people away, and to be expected. Again, we're not normally going to kind of take a look at some of that stuff unless there are some weather weenies like myself who do enjoy that. In which case, rock on. But that is just kind of a little bit of a look at what's going on with this. So again, big heat wave. Hopefully it'll be coming to an end here pretty soon. Obviously, where I am, it doesn't matter because apparently it could be 100 degrees in Minneapolis and it's just going to stay 60 degrees and cloudy here. I dig it. That's fine with me. I can go outside and not worry about dehydrating most of the time. There are exceptions, and I will tell you, and especially when we get maybe into fall a little bit, and then again into early summer, the lake breezes are really fun to take a look at. And one of these days, we'll catch one during one of our shows, hopefully. But the lake breezes are a riot, especially when you're dealing with like an air mass like what they have down in Minneapolis. Sometimes you get lake breezes getting in. It's really cool. So yeah, that is a lot of weather for you folks. Again, this is the weather chat. We talk about weather. That is what we talk about, is weather or weather things related. I know yesterday we somehow got on a rant about tornado seasons. That was kind of fun. Right now, though, severe weather-wise, we let's go ahead here and take a look back at North Dakota here. I'm gonna hold on. I'll flip the radar over in a second, but I did mention earlier there were some stronger storms there. Again, kind of riding that upper level ridge that is in place over the Canadian prairies and the high up plains. And let's see maybe if we can't see if there's anything here on the radar. And they got some good storms there. Let's see what we're dealing with here. Now it's very interesting here. I'm going to flip the radar. I'm going to flip the screen over you so you guys can see the radar. What you're going to see, and I just want to point this out now. Canada does their warnings differently than how we do our warnings. Back in 2007, yes, February 2007, we used to do the warnings by county, okay? Uh, you know, based on available technology at the time with radar and stuff like that and communicating it out. And because it was kind of easy, honestly. But it was also a big inconvenience because some counties can get really big, like San Bernardino County in California. It doesn't need to be that big. I'll go on a rant about that some other time. It's ridiculous how big it is, especially since everyone lives on one side of it, and the rest of it is just Edwards Air Force Base and desert, and eventually Nevada. That's besides the point. It's bigger than 7 U.S. states combined. Or, yeah, whatever. But you get the idea. So that was a problem. And when radar became a bit better and yada, 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 we were able to, we stopped doing it by county, severe thunderstorm warnings, that is, in tornado warnings, and we do the polygon shapes that you see now, which I do like better, to be honest, even though it is a bit complicated because, yeah, in broadcast, it's kind of a problem sometimes with some of our systems, but that's not the point. The point is that Canada does not do that. Canada still goes by the old way, and they go by county by county. Not only that, but they have this thing about liking to issue warnings about 5 hours before anything even happens, and then it goes for like the rest of the day. It's kind of strange. I'm not sure why they do it. It is somewhat old school, like old school. But so you're going to see a couple Canadian tornado warnings, and we'll take a look at that there. But anyways, flip the screen here. Woohoo! The Matrix. Let's take a look here. So again, as I was talking about, there's your Canadian tornado warning right there. Again, this is going on a county subdivision here, and let's see. This thing expires in an hour and a half. They issued it at about an hour ago. They issued this tornado warning, and it goes for another hour and a half. So again, those are your Canadian tornado warnings. Not necessarily always the most detailed, but then again, it's also not a high population area. Hey, let's take a look at the velocity here, though, see if we can see a little bit of rotation with it. And what's funny is that a lot of people don't realize they actually get some good tornadoes up in this area. In the Canadian prairies. As a matter of fact, I believe, if my statistics are correct, the northernmost F5 tornado was in Fargo, North Dakota, and it held that record until I want to say maybe '07 or '08. I believe around that, maybe a little bit later, in Manitoba had an F5 tornado, and that now holds the record for the most northern F5 tornado. Just kind of a fun side fact for you. Of course, that one really just stayed out in the middle of nowhere for the most part. A little bit of rotation with this storm. Again, this is right on the U.S.-Canadian border. When I talk about rotation here, remember how I mentioned the velocities earlier? So let me kind of walk you through what a velocity radar imagery is here. And that's that thing you see on the right that looks like the Christmas card gone wrong. Basically, what you're looking at is the radar is deciphering the wind direction in one of two ways. It's deciphering the wind in one of two directions. It's either going towards the radar, in which case it's green, or it's going away from the radar, in which case it's red. Where the values get brighter, higher wind speed. So it's a very simple thing to kind of analyze. Now, obviously, you know, this is just kind of outflow and maybe some bad radar returns here and there. Okay, that's not a tornado. But what we look for in meteorology, aside from kind of that classic hook signature that you see a little bit there on your left, we also look for these, you know, the reds and the greens really uptight together at high values. So this storm, and now mind you also, folks, this radar is in Minot, North Dakota. You know, so we're looking a little bit higher up, and because the Earth is curved, the further away from the radar site you get, the higher up in the storm you're looking. So tornadoes happen obviously at the surface. Now, mind you, they're connected from the surface all the way to the top of the storm. Okay, so it's not just strictly surface, but tornadoes, as we define them, are on the surface, and that's what we warn for. That's what you see on TV. That's the tornado. So those happen very low down. So when you get further away from the radar, you're looking more into kind of mid-level of the storm, a few thousand feet above. So sometimes we actually have kind of a set of rules that we actually use based on how far something is away from the radar, and we could say, okay, well, if we see this amount of rotation, what's called a mesocyclone, you know, the main rotation of the storm, if it gets to a certain value, there's a good probability there could be a trail on the ground, even though the radar cannot scan that. So again, a little hard for you to picture in your head maybe, but don't worry, folks. The more of these chats you watch, the more this will start to become second nature to you. Don't worry, we got probably thousands of more shows to discuss. You know, the intricacies of radar, and believe me, somewhere I got my notes from some of my radar classes, and it is insane what these radars can do nowadays. Dual pole, fascinating. But anyways. So there's a little bit of rotation there with that storm, a little bit of a hook signature. Again, not the strongest rotation. This might not get a warning unless there's actually something confirmed on the ground, at least around this area. That probably wouldn't get a tornado warning. But then again, Canada tends to be a bit more liberal with their tornado warnings. They tend to give them out a bit more, and that's just based on their structure. Let's take a look over. Now we are back into North Dakota. So we're a little bit closer to the radar site here. And one thing I'm going to do, well, maybe I won't do that. I was going to change the colors here, but there is a series of yellow lines you see here are. That's what you're looking at. That is a severe thunderstorm watch. Normally I would change the color, but maybe kind of simplify it here, because if there is a severe thunderstorm warning that's issued, I don't want it to clash with a severe thunderstorm watch. And we're going to keep an eye on this one storm here, because it does look actually kind of interesting here on the radar. I've never been to Minot. I've worked in Fargo, but I've never actually been over to Minot. The Air Force Base is up there, and yeah, some oil stuff too. But I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to see about, I know this is going to be kind of boring for some of you, don't worry. All I'm doing here is going to try to filter it a little bit here so that we don't get our warnings confused. All right, so we don't need that. So we're gonna, so this is a watch. All right, what I have done is I have set it so that instead of, you know, so we see this little shade here. Okay, that is a severe thunderstorm watch, and yes, we do it by counties and by boxes. It's really weird. That is another thing that one of these days you may hear me go on a rant about. So right now there's no active warnings, but I'm telling you, looking at this storm right here that's trying to come out of, what is that, Kenmar, again, we are looking northwest of Minot. Okay, we don't need the severe thunderstorm warning, or watch. See, that's the problem with having that on, is, boop. Actually, you know what? I have a simple idea. We'll just turn it off. We don't need the watch right now. We know it's there. We'll turn it off. How about that, everyone? There we go. Simple. Boom. Now we're not have to worry about when the warning is issued. We don't have to worry about it covering over. You just saw critical thinking skills live. There you go. Free of charge, folks. You saw critical thinking skills. I learned something. All right. Yeah, all right. Let's go ahead and we'll go flip back to the radar here, and we'll take a look at this little storm here. And I just kind of want to stay with these little guys here for just a second. I don't really think that these guys are probably going to amount to much more than maybe a little bit of hail and some gusty winds. Looking at it, the one thing that is kind of interesting with this storm is this part right here that we're looking at. These two are now, folks, keep in mind, this is the same, okay, listen, just in case you don't, all right, normal radar, right? We're looking at these three storms, okay? I have a second radar flipped on the right here. We're looking at the same thing, okay? They're, just different settings. One's velocity, one's reflectivity, all right? One's rain, one's wind. We're looking at the same part. So here's Kenmar there, and there's Kenmar there. Again, split there. Just want to make sure, because sometimes that can confuse some people. But it looks like, again, nothing severe with these storms right now. This kind of would be a little bit interesting to keep an eye on. What I am curious about, while we're on the topic, and I'm going to go ahead and flip it here so you don't have to see me scrolling through the computer really quickly. But one thing I do kind of want to take a look at, while while I have yours all's attention, is I'm curious as to what the atmospheric setup is like. I wonder about the wind shear is what I want to see here a little bit. I'm just taking a look. Don't worry, I'm doing some stuff. Again, if you thought what I showed you with the skew T is scary, some of the stuff that weather stuff I have to look at might be even scarier. So I don't want everyone to think that this is a show where all we do is take a look at charts. And I just want to see though, we got that little. So there is some instability. There is a little bit of wind shear. That is interesting. Well, I mean, it's kind of to be expected, I guess. But what I am finding interesting about it, though, is I wonder if it's going to be enough. Now, mind you, folks, if you've ever been around to this area, I don't know. Once you leave Fargo, North Dakota, or Grand Forks, there is nothing. I mean, it is absolutely nothing. Literally, it's funny because I when I used to work out there, it was funny because one of the first things I did anytime I went to a different market, to do broadcast. Wow. Every time I would go to a new market, I like to explore the area around. And typically, uh, you know, most TV markets are kind of localized. They just follow a simple metro or whatnot. Well, up there, it's a lot different. There's not many towns, so they cover huge areas. And I just remember it was just like, you know, what would be driving to the next county over back in Ohio, which would take about 20 minutes at most of the time. Uh, in North Dakota, it takes about an hour and a half to get to the next city on your map. So that was always kind of interesting to me. So, but anyways, I'm not really quite sure where I was going with that, other than the fact that it's pretty rural out there. So sometimes we get a very interesting thing happen. When tornadoes are rated, they're rated based on the damage they cause. But what if there's no damage to be found, even though there was a tornado? Well, then it gets a rating of U, unknown. That's literally what it gets rated as. It's EFU. That's how it comes across, and I've seen that quite a bit with. I've seen that quite a bit in my time up there, and even honestly up here too with tornadoes. Okay, so that said, it does look like there is the possibility for maybe one or two of those storms to rotate a little bit. And so, ooh, look at that. Just as I say that, we're going to go ahead and flip over the radar here. And we're going to take a look at this storm. It's looking a little bit better. Now, mind you, I mean, it's not the most textbook here, but what we're starting to see here on this radar imagery, and again, we're looking, give you guys, let's get your bearings straight here, okay? All right? We're going to zoom out here, get your bearings straight so you can see what we're looking at, all right? This is how big of a weather nerd, I mean, this folks, this storm is in the middle of nowhere, okay? I mean, there's like maybe 5 people in that area, okay? This is middle of nowhere, North Dakota. I mean, more middle of nowhere than most of North Dakota. I mean, it is there. Like I said, this is not we're northwest of Minot. All right, so you know This is not something that would probably ever be broken into the news, even if it was producing a tornado, unless it was, really big. But anyways, what we're looking at here on this radar imagery is actually kind of interesting here, and it's an interesting little setup. Let me make sure I got the radar on for you guys. Yep. All right. It's an interesting little setup here, and the fact that we have this one particular storm, and I just realized, whoops. All right, we have this one particular storm, okay, and it's right off to the north of Baden, and it looks like it's got a pretty clear inflow. The only thing that this storm has to kind of worry about is interference from this storm down here. You see me circling a little bit here. So this is kind of the area that we would be watching, and it's right kind of here. So what you're looking at here is, a storm that might be trying to get a little bit of rotation to it. Now it does look like it has a little bit. If we look over to our right here, we got winds that are going away from the radar. So in this case, the red colors there. We got greens going towards the radar. So we have a little bit very faint. But again, mind you, we're looking, well, actually, we're kind of close to the radar site here. So we are looking a little bit, kind of in the right direction. But it does appear to be at least a little bit of some maybe faint rotation. There may be a very faint wall cloud kind of right in that area, maybe. Obviously, we might never know because this is really rural out here, folks. So what you're kind of seeing here is we got, this storm, which has all this, it's got its updraft. Upper level winds are coming in from the southwest. We took a look at that upper level chart earlier. Again, it's rounding the upper level high. So, of course, based on where that upper level high was located, it's over, Kansas City, basically. Clockwise flow around it. So the upper level winds are coming in from the southwest. All right. So that updraft happens, and of course, naturally, the upper level winds are kind of pushing it away. And so that kind of, why we're seeing all this rain up here a little bit. So this is kind of the main updraft here a little bit. Now, what you got to watch out for is that, in order for it to, kind of intensify more, maybe, rotate a little bit more, is you want to keep kind of this area cleared a little bit. The other area I just circled right there, you kind of want to keep that clear because that is the inflow notch. All right, that is the air is kind of going in this way. The storm is kind of, kind of pulling it in. And I'll tell you what, whoa! Let's go ahead and see if we can't erase this mess here that I have made all over the radar because new radar scans here. But so kind of what looks a little bit interesting here. See if I can't. There we go. Is it looks like we are kind of seeing a little bit here of it might be a little bit in the way of some low level rotation. Now this is not still the most pronounced thing. On a side note, this could very well be hail down here. But it does appear that there is at least enough of an inflow kind of now. So again, we want to keep this area, I'll go ahead and I'll circle it again for you guys. Kind of want to keep this area, this is the area that we're watching. You want to kind of keep this area right out in front of it, hopefully as cleared as you can from other precipitation. And that's why I say that this down here, this blob, this storm down here, might kind of affect it a little bit, and that some of this rain cooled air might, interfere with the inflow here. But right now, that doesn't at least appear to be the case at the moment, as there does appear to be at least a little bit of rotation. We got, again, our winds that are going towards the radar, winds that are going away from the radar. Again, this is kind of what we're going to be watching out for, is this area right here. Now, again, this is not very strong, but it does indicate that there might be at least a faint little bit of rotation here. Now, again, we took a look at the wind shear values, and there was, well, I took a look at the wind shear values, and there was a little bit of, a little bit of wind shearing going on around this area. So it does actually kind of appear that there is the possibility that, again, the storm, well, not possibility, it does appear the storm is kind of rotating just a little bit. And we'll kind of see what it does here over the next few radar scans without going into, a lot of detail. Let's just kind of take a look a little bit what the atmosphere is up around this area here. I am kind of curious. If we flip it on again, we're not going to get much in the way of surface observations. See, it's 81 degrees there, 77 winds coming in from the northeast, coming in from the east here. So this is kind of on the other side here of that, that all that hot air. Oh, now this is really cool, folks. Take a look at this. This is really cool. Let's see if we can't loop this here. I'll show it to you and I'll explain it in a moment, but I want to see it looped here before I really go in and explain it. This is actually something kind of cool. One thing I like to look out for a lot when I, talk about, weather and whatnot. And let's see here. Yep. All right. So what you're seeing right here, all right, follow with your eyes. See that line right there that pops up, that little C-looking shape there? That is outflow. That is rain-cooled air. All right. So that is rain-cooled air coming out of the storm, this little line right here. And it's acting as basically a little cold front, which on a weather map we would indicate that it is a local small cold front, so we put these little hashes in. But anyways, yeah, it's basically acting like a little cold front. This is rain cooled air coming down. You can see it here, a little quiet behind that. But sometimes when we watch these guys we watch these little guys because they can also help produce new thunderstorms. Now, if this thing runs too far out, or if it cuts out the inflow, if it gets too far out ahead of the storm, it could actually destroy it. And that's what causes the demise of those summer pop-up thunderstorms. There's not much upper level winds to move them along. They just kind of sit there. That rain-cooled air quickly falls and cuts off the whole thing. So there you go. So in this case, right now, it looks like this outflow boundary is kind of cleared at least a little bit from the inflow, but we'll kind of keep an eye on it. Might maybe try to produce a couple of other little pop-up storms here or there. And actually, it looks like it extends, honestly, all the way back here too. So we would, for completion, as one of my professors used to say, we would just kind of hatch it there. And there you go. So you got your own little localized cold front there, some rain-cooled air coming in. So that's pretty cool. All right, so those are not unusual to see on radar scans. I always like seeing those because they're kind of fun. So again, that is a look right now at our storm. So we're still going to keep an eye on that storm. I am not done with it yet. I know some of you, might want to go eat your dinner or whatnot. Well, I guess we might still be on when you come back. I don't know. We'll find out. But in the meantime, for those of you who are like me and kind of like to geek out a little bit here with this storm, even though it's probably not going to, be the biggest storm on record, it's just a little guy out there. It's just kind of doing its own thing. It doesn't even know that we're watching it. Funny, huh? As a matter of fact, I bet you right now, no one in Donnybrook knows that we're talking about their town. So kind of fun there. It looks like there might be another little kind of outflow there, but I want to go back to the velocity here. I just want to see if this thing's changed any. Come on, you can do it. It's still kind of there, but it might be getting more outdraft dominated now. We don't see it quite as. I mean, there's still at least a little something trying to kind of rotate, but I mean, this is not a very strong signature. I mean, that's why there's no warning on it. I mean, we're kind of, and out here, like I said, in the plains, I mean, these guys like to rotate sometimes, and that's just kind of what they do. Let me go ahead here. I just want to double check one thing really fast. Yep, we got the warnings on. So we'll know in a little bit if there is possibly any warning, but certainly possibly the possibility for some hail, maybe with that one storm down to the south that we were taking a look at with the defined outflow boundary. So I want to take a look at that here really quickly while we're still on it. I just want to see here. Yeah, there could very well be some hail with that storm. I mean, that's a pretty good value. Then again, we're also kind of far away from the radar, but regardless, get the idea. There's probably going to be a little bit of hail with that storm down there in the middle of nowhere. I could easily, maybe quarter size hail possibly with that storm. So that's kind of interesting to see. Otherwise, no, we don't need two radars. We want to go back to the velocity. All right, so we're going to kind of watch this for maybe a few more other scans here. In the meantime, while we're doing that, if you guys have any questions, well, I just realized how far out. Josh, you asked, will it rain again in Indiana? Yeah, we are expecting that there will. Sorry, Josh, I hope. Boy, I don't know how long your comment's been there. I do apologize. I hope you didn't think I was ignoring you there. I had the radar on full screen. Uh, didn't get a chance to check the comments there. As far as Indiana is concerned, there is going to be the possibility, hopefully, for some showers and even some thunderstorms later on. But in the meantime, probably not necessarily for today. I mean, it depends upon where you are. So let's just kind of assume Indianapolis. That's a good central location in Indiana. That actually kind of works out quite well. And let's see here. The weather office is thinking. Yeah, as that frontal boundary does slide back down towards you guys Friday, maybe Friday night, but yeah, that's about it really. And that's not a very high chance. So Josh, unfortunately, you're kind of stuck like us up here in northern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin, where it is just dry. Like it is dry, dude. And unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be staying dry for you guys down there too. So not a whole lot in the way of active weather. Now, again, that's just kind of a quick glance, a little bit out of my forecast range, but still, it's going to stay hot. Unfortunately, Josh, it's looking like it's going to be kind of on the warm side. So that in mind, like I said, Josh, I hope you're still with us. I don't know when you asked that question. I do apologize for the long delay. See, that happens when we're in full screen radar mode there. So, anyways, yeah, it's just been hot for a lot of folks out there, and it's going to stay very hot for a lot of folks out there. Unfortunately, it's also probably going to be staying dry a little bit. Now, that's one thing too. Uh, I'm just curious with you guys down in Indianapolis, what they're thinking for the day tomorrow. Oh, yeah, that's not gonna be fun in Indiana tomorrow. Ironically, it won't be as bad as it was in Minneapolis. Well, it's at least expected not to be as bad as it was in Minneapolis today, but still mid 90s with heat index well above 100 degrees, most likely. That is not going to be fun. So it's all coming your way. Again, same system and everything. Now, again, we are going to start watching the frontal boundary start to kind of slide its way a bit down to the south as we go over the next couple of days, and that will maybe give you that chance for that shower or thunderstorm as we head in towards what I believe what they're timing it as what Friday night. But again, it's not a very high probability. In fact, it's actually the same probability that we have up in Minneapolis for tonight. So we'll kind of see maybe what happens in Minneapolis, and maybe if there's a little bit more activity around there tonight, late tonight, maybe that would kind of maybe be a little bit of a hope for some more activity down in Indiana when that does make its way through. But right now, it's just not looking like a very high probability. Again, Friday night, maybe going into late Friday afternoon, going into Friday night, you could have maybe a storm or two. That's Indianapolis. But again, it's kind of a similar setup to what's happening up here, at least in the upper Midwest. So not very high chances, but hopefully things change a little bit. And while we're on the topic, I'm curious as to the U.S. drought monitor here. What are they? Let's check with the Climate Prediction Center. See what they got going on there. Long range forecasting is a whole other beast, I tell you. It is. I'm just curious here as to what they're thinking beyond next week, and it does not look pleasant. Mm-mm-mm-mm. No, no, no. They're expecting it's going to stay pretty warm, especially around the same areas that are already seeing that heat. So they're expecting it's going to stay kind of above average across most of the Midwest, but especially across Iowa, going back down into the central part of the plains. They're also expecting the precipitation to stay normal. Now the drought monitor right now in Indiana, you guys ironically don't really have a drought per se, except maybe around Terre Haute. A little bit of abnormal dry weather there, and they're expecting that over. Well, what I'm curious as to is to what are they expecting though long range? And they're expecting that it might, you're gonna have a little bit of a dry spell here, but they're not expecting it to develop into a drought. That is not the same though for Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, Minnesota, where I am. Looks like they're expecting that the drought conditions are going to be continuing. That's unfortunate. As far as temperatures, though, are concerned, the CPC expects it'll be about normal temperatures ish for much of the Midwest as we go for the next couple of months. So aside from the kind of this freak heat wave and maybe next week, it'll probably see our temperatures returning back down to average. Maybe, uh, yeah. So that's at least as being there. So that's good news. Thank God, because I do not want a drought. Well, it'll be staying that way for us here. That's for sure. With that in mind, let's go ahead and take one more look here over at our storms. How are they doing? They're still hanging out, folks. They're still hanging out. Those of you following along at home, like I said, they're trying to rotate a little bit, but again, there's, it's not very strong, and it might not end up being very strong. Wouldn't be surprised if we have like a possibly like a little bit more intensification with some of this rotation just based on the kind of the atmospheric setup, but it's not going to be a tornado outbreak by any means. There's just a couple little storms, and honestly, when they're kind of isolated like that, that they tend to like that. Storms, well, for tornadoes at least, they don't like to be grouped up with everyone else. They like to do kind of their own thing here. And I want to see if there's perhaps a radar a little bit closer that we could pull out in Canada, but it doesn't look like, yeah, they don't have one. I guess they're just going to use Minot because we still have that little storm going right along the U.S.-Canadian border, which again probably has a little bit of does probably have a little bit of low-level rotation to it, but again not enough to really even prompt a warning, and that's not unusual. If we flip it over here, we'll take a look. Again, this is the guy right up on the U.S.-Canadian border. They finally downgraded the tornado warning to a severe thunderstorm warning that goes for another 3 hours. The storm's not even going to be there by that point. This one also goes for about 3 hours. Oh boy, that's the Canadian ones. But we're still kind of keeping an eye on this little guy right down here, right around Donnybrook. I tell you, it's trying. It really is kind of trying to rotate a little bit. Not necessarily the best, but it is still trying nonetheless. And also, like I said, we'll hang with it for a few more radar scans. Of course, knowing my luck, as soon as we were to end this chat, it probably boom explode or something like that. But if we stay on it, it probably won't do anything. Just kind of the way it goes. Just kidding. But yeah, and again, we're looking in the middle of nowhere here over in North Dakota. So that is, like I said, something to kind of keep an eye on. Does look like has maybe the possibility for, like I said, a little bit of hail here. A little bit of probably some downdraft winds on the back side of it. But this is kind of the area right around Donnybrook that kind of want to watch, and we'll just see what that does over the next couple of radar scans. Again, that's kind of pretty much about it. While we're on the topic, let's go ahead and check on our guys back down in Ohio, our storms over in Ohio, I guess I should say. And we're going to see really quickly what they're up to, and then we'll come back to that little guy. Let's go ahead here and see what's going down with Ohio. Any warnings? And the answer is a flash flood warning. I'm not surprised, over around Mentor. If you've ever been there, Mentor is actually a very pretty little lake town, far east side of the Cleveland area. But let's go ahead here and see. Yeah, look at that. So if we go ahead and loop that green box you see is the flash flood warning. I guess we don't need the velocity radar for this. But as we watch these storms kind of track their way, you can see how around the Mentor area they've just been getting heavy rain more or less over quite a little while, and it just happens to be the direction of these storms here if the loop does load, but it looks like it won't do it right now. But I can assure you that they're certainly seeing some heavy rain, and heck, they're still going to probably be dealing with some more heavy showers and everywhere else. So yeah, that's actually really kind of cool. Kind of a little interesting situation that they got going on there. Again, these storms just coming straight down almost to the south, and again, they're kind of riding along that upper level ridge, which as we took a look at earlier, the upper level ridge, is angled back down, so it's kind of a northwesterly wind flow in the upper levels, and that's kind of more or less what's directing those storms there. So here we go. There's our loop. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of a look here, and yeah, you can see they've just been getting kind of pounded with heavy rain. And then they got hit with the first round, now they're getting hit with that round, and they might still have that round up towards the north to deal with. So Kind of cool, actually, there. So if you're driving on I-90, once you get past Euclid, it's probably going to be a very wet go of it. And yeah, that's kind of interesting. Quite interesting here. And actually, I noticed something. Is it still there? No. There's some interesting radar returns way over here, but it has to do with the radar not actually anything happening in the atmosphere. But that would be a fun thing to talk about one of these days if we're able to catch that while we're doing the show. Let's go ahead and we're going to go back here really quickly. And I'm sure some of you guys are probably going to want to, maybe start getting over toward doing other things. And I know I myself, I still have to make myself dinner. But take a look at the storm here a couple more times. We'll wait. We'll give it 10 more minutes. We'll see what it does. Again, it's right around the Donnybrook area, rural North Dakota. Wait and see maybe another radar scan or two what that little guy is going to do. And then we'll go ahead and, wrap things up. Again, in the meantime, if anyone watching has any questions, feel free to ask them. It can be about anything, really. Whoa, there's the Matrix. Hey, what's up, everyone? So there you go. You don't want to see the behind-the-scenes stuff, but yeah. While we're just waiting for the next few radar scans. So overall, yes, been very hot. The upper level high, this heat wave is kind of the main dominating feature. But as we've talked about before, everything in weather is connected. Often, sometimes not as spectacularly visual as what we've been seeing over the past couple of days, but certainly is the case this time around. That upper level high that's given that heat and across the Midwest is helping to produce those storms across western Pennsylvania, as well as those storms that we were looking at all the way up in North Dakota. It's also it also actually helped to steal Tropical Depression Harold, Tropical Storm Harold, briefly, when it made landfall in Corpus Christi. And, that whole thing helped to keep Tropical Storm Harold way down to the south, not really moving much or anything along those lines. So kind of interesting, really. And again, what's still interesting is that little storm there. Boy, it is trying to rotate just a little bit. We'll give it another scan here. We'll see what it does. Quite interesting, really. Again, I know you don't have it up on the radar here, and the only reason why I don't have it up on the radar at the moment is because I need to keep an eye, just in case, make sure that there are any comments, if there are any, because I know I missed one earlier, and I'd hate to do that again. Not like we have many people watching right now, but hey, over time, we shall probably get more people, and then we'll have lots more questions and comments. But in the meantime, yeah, we are just dealing kind of with that storm out there in North Dakota. And again, see, now what's going to happen, folks, just so you know, is as soon as we're done with this chat, I'm probably going to keep the radar up here. I'm going to be watching this myself. Believe me, you can ask anyone that knows me. Love watching strong storms, that's for sure. We'll see what this little guy tries to do. And like I said, I mean, it has kind of some of the characteristics that it's trying to rotate, but it also has a few things kind of working against it. And the one thing that I'm, thinking has going against it the most is the fact that there's that storm immediately, like right down, like attached to it to the south. And that might kind of upset the inflow just enough that it will probably kind of, more or less, keep it from doing much. But there is at least a little bit of rotation there around the Donnybrook area. Again, probably very faint. Obviously, like I said, no warnings associated with this, and rightfully so. The signatures are just not the strongest with it. So, overall, it is a let's see here. It kind of quiet. It's not necessarily quiet, I guess I should say, in the weather world. I mean, we got that massive heat wave. And you know what we're gonna have to do tomorrow? High temperatures. Yeah, we're gonna have to take a look and see who got the hottest. And like I said, folks, when we were looking at Winona earlier, it was 102 degrees in Winona, Minnesota. Yeah. And as I, kind of glanced at earlier, it is actually, at least, earlier in the broadcast, it was actually hotter, more miserable down in Winona than it was over in Louisiana. So that tells you a lot about this heat wave. But then again, it's only going to last a few days. It's not like it's going to last, all season, so hence why the Deep South is warmer. Happens every day. Um, so yeah, we got the heat wave. We got Tropical Storm Franklin still hanging in. Again, it's trying to exit it's exiting Hispaniola. It's going to be back out in the open waters. It's going to deal with a little bit of wind shear over the next couple of days, and that's going to kind of maybe keep it from intensifying as much as it might want to. It's also going to kind of keep it from moving very much. There's a couple of other things in the way too, you know, that are kind of preventing it from doing much. But eventually, it'll kind of get a little bit of a right of way. They'll probably lose some of that wind shear. It's going to be over very warm ocean temperatures, and that's probably going to help Franklin to intensify a bit more. My guess is as we head towards the weekend, well, not my guess, but the Hurricane Center is expecting that as we go into the weekend, we're going to see it, you know, maybe becoming a hurricane finally, and then maybe even intensifying a little bit more. But there's still a lot of uncertainty with it, and again, just giving kind of its, you know, not well organized state at the moment. You know, we're gonna have to wait over the next couple of days, you know, as it tries to get better organized and stuff like that. That's kind of about it in the tropics, at least right now. I know what 2 days ago we were talking about we had a lot of things going on, but as I mentioned a couple of days ago, none of them were particularly strong. One of them ran immediately into land, Texas, and is now, you know, nothing more than a little bit of an upper level trough, kind of skirting its way down across southern Arizona. The other one, I think, was Emily, became a tropical storm for what 12 hours, and then it weakened again, and then it just kind of fell apart. Now it's just remnants, which is kind of something Franklin's also dealing with, some of the remnants of Emily, I believe. But the other, and then there's another disturbance way out in the West Atlantic or East Atlantic. We'll keep an eye on that one, but it's likely not going to affect land. It's just going to stay out in the open water. So that is pretty much that. So tropics again, they tend to heat up this time of the year. It's when the water temperature is the warmest out in that, you know, out in the Atlantic. Even though, you know, it's weird because I know we talk about, you know, you normally think of the hottest things happening in like July or whatnot. Well, water takes a bit longer to respond. It takes a lot longer to warm up, and it takes a lot longer to cool down. So, you know, water temperatures tend to actually be their warmest, at least around the northern hemisphere, you know, this time of the year. A little bit later, and actually, as I mentioned, what was it? I think the other night I mentioned that, you know, it's interesting because sometimes if you look at coastal areas, uh, they tend to see sometimes they'll see their hottest weather in August. San Francisco is one of them. San Francisco sees their hottest weather, their hottest averages and temperatures generally in September. Uh, the deep south, I know, like along the Gulf Coast, tends to be in August. I know most places tend to see their hottest temperatures in like July, at least, you know, average wise. But I do believe then the parts of the deep south, it's actually August. And again, some of that has to do with the fact that it takes a while for the water to respond. So fun little fact for you there. Interior places, nah, it's normally July. For just about everybody. Though it can have, you know, it can be hot and miserable, you know, anywhere from June to September. Heck, I have seen the weirdest one I ever saw was in West Virginia. Oh, it looks like darn it, our storm. Oh man. All right. Quick little rant here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. But and then we'll take a look at the storm really quickly. But weirdest I ever saw was in West Virginia. Um, they had one of the Fairmont had its hottest temperature of the year in October. That was weird. It was 95. And I remember that day because I was up in Pittsburgh that day. And it was also like 95 degrees over around Pittsburgh that day. And it was October, folks. It was October. That was also the same. That was the fall right before the winter where we didn't see any snow anywhere really. You know, I think we had like what where I was in Ohio, like 6 inches, I think, the whole year, and then yeah, central Pennsylvania, there was like no nor'easters. It was that winter, 2019 to 20. That winter was just yeah. Not what I would say is a fun winter. Of course, then again, you know me, I like my snow and everything else. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at that storm one more time. Unfortunately, it looks like what I kind of feared happened would happen. We'll flip up the matrix here and we'll take a look at that storm. At least for the moment being, it looks like that the storm down to the south here it looks like the long story short, it looks like the inflow got interrupted, and we got this kind of scraggly guy or this new little thing popping up right where the inflow was, and you can see we're not really seeing kind of that very faint rotation we were seeing a couple radar scans ago. If we kind of loop this here, maybe briefly, really quickly, if the bandwidths permit us. Um, but you can kind of see that little guy popped up, and that's probably in association with maybe some of the rain cooled air coming out of that storm anyway. Uh, might have been just enough there. So if we kind of look here, you can see there it comes, and boom. See that little thing that popped up just in front of it, interacting with that storm just down to the south here. So it looks like, for the time being, this guy might need to reorganize, but at least at the time, it looks like we kind of lost that little bit of rotation that we did have. And again, it's interesting. We talk about how tornadoes, tend to be strong. Same thing with hurricanes, but ironically, both hurricanes and tornadoes are very fragile, and something like that can easily, cut it off. All right, everyone. I think we've gone long enough, and I believe that we covered a lot here. We'll be back tomorrow evening, probably a little bit later than what we started today. We'll see. For those of you who might be joining in from the Facebook pages, I'll put it up on the Wisconsin page, the link early. But if you are watching on YouTube, like and make sure you subscribe to this channel, and for all the other weather chats that I'll do, as well as maybe some other future things that some other meteorologists might also try doing too. So yeah, make sure you tune in for that, and certainly, yeah. We'll be back tomorrow evening. We'll take a look again at Franklin. The heat will have moved. I think now all of Indiana is under a heat warning. At least it was earlier today, and I think it still is. So we'll take a look at Indiana probably tomorrow, and we'll see what else is going on weather-wise too. So make sure you tune in then. Until the meantime, thank you all very much for taking the time to join me. I really hope you enjoyed this weather chat here, and don't worry, as we keep going forward with these, we'll be able to do a little bit more. So stay tuned.